Yo, what's happening? Wait, let me get my phone. What's happening, guys? I'm file number 38. It's a Friday. I'm just chilling. Fuck. And yeah, a whole bunch of shit has been happening since last time. Yeah, hold up. I'm just doing some shit, connecting some chargers. There you go. All right, we're good to go. Let me just check the sound. See if we got it. All right. All right. Looks like we're good to go. So, number 38 for real. We're going to talk about some real issues because the Hispanic community has been assaulted this week or this couple weeks. And it's something that might require a Chivo style intervention. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I'm just playing. Not a Chivo style intervention, but certainly something along those lines. Apparently, my connection is kind of bad, but I don't know. I don't know about that. Let me see. All right, so first off, we're going to start with the topic of the conversation, of course, and it's what I named video after this live stream after, and it is the the Dominican bodega owner. Now we're not talking about bodega, bro. That's a different issue altogether. But we are talking about a bodega owner out of New York who was being assaulted by a guy. And let me tell you guys a story of what happened. So let's see. Let me just share. I'm showing here. This made the rounds when it happened. All right. So it says here 61-year-old bodega owner Jose Alba was attacked by an enraged career criminal. Austin Simon, who went behind the counter and choked him over a bag of chips. Alba defended himself and Simon died. DA Alvin Bragg has charged him with murder. So before we play the video, so what apparently happened was this guy's girlfriend was trying to buy a bag of chips, and apparently she wanted to use her EBT card, but it was not possible, or the funds in her EBT card ran out. Basically, she couldn't afford the bag of chips. She got angry with him. She then called her boyfriend. Her boyfriend started acting out, and Jose Alba let him know what's up, basically. Because he went behind the counter. Like this guy, Austin, he went behind the counter, so shoved him and everything. Let's look at it just now, actually. Let's just look at it. So as you can see, these people get respect, these Dominican bodega owners. Very hardworking. He's being held. He's been arrested. He's been held up. I think it was at Rikers Island. Posted bail of $250,000. There was a GoFundMe that was attempting to raise money for his bail, and GoFundMe decided to eliminate that fundraiser. And so, well, that's that, isn't it? So, if you attack a bodega owner, you better make sure you have the right ethnicity so you can get away with it. Now, this guy apparently, the guy who assaulted Mr. Alba, Austin Simon, so apparently he got off some other charge for assaulting a police officer. So it's not like this guy doesn't have any previous issues or previous runnings with the law as to whether he was let off for assaulting a police officer, which I'm pretty sure was unwarranted. But Mr. Alba is being held up on $250,000 bail at Rikers for defending himself. It's just like, what the fuck? Now, let me also show you an even worse case. But before we do that, I'm going to read the comments. Salvatrucha, what's up? He says, we need Chivo back. He's the one who started this community. Torres said, typical nigga. He thought Hispanic are pussies like whites. Salvatrucha says, Dominican kills innocent FBA. Roy Chess, what's up? Hey, what's up? Says, there's a reason, though. Deadly force was not to be used here. See, I don't give a damn about your New York rules and regulations and laws, bro, because if someone's very clearly intending to harm you, you should have all the right to defend yourself. Get the hell out of here. No, I'm not taking that excuse. I'm not doing that excuse out here. Bullshit. Right? This is why I think Florida has some good laws when it comes to this. Someone wants to fuck with you, you can end them. And I think that's reasonable because then you prevent shit like this. You prevent shitheads from being able to just put you around and beat you up and you just don't do anything about it because, make sure you don't use too much deadly force, though. Because that's worse. Defending yourself is worse than assaulting someone. Get the fuck out of here, bro. Get the fuck out of here. So let me just tweet something out. All right. And then Salvatrucha says, what type of force should be used then? Roy Chat says, self-defense and deadly force are two distinct things. And Torres says that was clearly self-defense. Well, Roy Chess, no, I don't agree with you at all. Every case of self-defense does imply a potential necessity to use deadly force because you don't know whether you're going to use it or not. Because you can't predict the future. What if, maybe let's say you punch someone in self-defense, and that's about good enough for that person to stop messing with you, right? But what if it's not enough? So now you have to escalate things. You escalate things until the threat is neutralized. And what, do you think this bodega owner doesn't know the type of clientele that is willing to kill him over a bag of chips? What, you think it's his first time hearing about or dealing with this type of rowdy customer? Do you really think he doesn't know what could happen? Really? I mean, do you guys already forget that case of arson? And I think it was in New York too. A New York bodega got arsoned by Ustedes ya saben quién, right? So no, come on, stop this whole shit, bro. Stop this whole shit. Again, I'm not talking about the legality of it. That's up to the New York DA. Apparently, his name's Alvin Bragg, and he's going to throw the book at him. Like, we know how bullshit New York is, right? We understand that. But no, morally speaking, he did nothing wrong. He did absolutely nothing wrong. What, you think that anyone just has the right to come up to the back of the what do you call it, behind the counter, and just threaten you and push you? Like, what do you think is going to happen? Come on, guys, stop with the not Roy Chess. Come on, stop with that whole shit, bro. You playing right now. And this is another case again from New York. Apparently, it's a place called Bell Fries. So apparently, what happened here? It says here, for extra sauce costing $1.75, women attack employees. Restaurant chef Rafael Nunez videotape everything on his cell phone. And we're just going to watch this whole video. So what you saw just there happened because the owner of the restaurant or the chef or whoever was it told this girl, okay, you want extra sauce? That'll cost you $1.75. Because it's New York, because it's expensive, and because nowadays things are kind of tits up with the economy, so you probably have to charge people a little extra for the sauce. God forbid that in New York you charge extra for the sauce. God fucking forbid, right? And so, usual suspects, they get pissed off. And then, of course, because maybe the restaurant owners didn't want to do anything about it, right? Because they know that the DA of New York, Alvin Bragg's going to throw the book at them. So, like, in situations like that, you have very difficult choices. Do you try to neutralize the threat and maybe, get 25 to life? Or are you willing to just let them destroy your whole business? Maybe potentially kill you, although in this second case, that wasn't a possibility. Maybe in the first one, definitely for sure. But in this second case, risk them destroying your entire business. Maybe you're not insured. Maybe insurance might not cover that because, I don't think insurance do FBA rage protection. I don't think that's I don't think any insurance company really covers that. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't. It's a catch-22. It's a catch-20 fucking two. And yes, I have yet another clip for you guys. Now we're going away from the East Coast and now we're taking it to the West Coast because yes, even California is suffering under the same thing. And so obviously the other two videos were of the Dominican community. Well, I don't know about the second one actually. I don't know who owns that restaurant, but certainly the bodega owner on the first one was Dominican. Now we're going to see some anti-Hispanic Mexican discrimination. But it's okay because white people are not doing it, and that's important. As long as it's not white supremacy being promoted, you can be as racist as you want against Mexicans. So let's look at the video.
Boston and Normandy. And
we got tacos, baby! Burrito!
Smartphone camera.
We got tacos, baby! Burrito!
Smartphone cameras were rolling as the Saturday attack unfolded, showing a woman trashing the South Tacos stand, dumping tins full of food and pouring out barrels of horchata and juice before assaulting Berta Zuniga, who told us Monday her neck is sore and she's afraid.
Es que no se sabe. A veces sí me pongo de nervios porque no sabe uno.
Afraid and nervous to speak out. Zuniga says the woman, who they've seen before near their spot on Slauson and Normandy in South LA, went ballistic after workers told her it would take a few minutes to make her order. After hitting Zuniga, they say she fixed herself a plate of food and then, as seen here, spit on everything left behind.
We got tacos, baby! Burrito!
Smartphone.
So yeah, basically you can't tell them food's gonna take a little longer than usual. You can't tell them that the sauce costs extra. You can't tell them that your card's declined. You can just basically just give them what they want and do it fast and hopefully don't complain about it. These were 3 Hispanic communities that were assaulted this week. And I don't want to be conspiratorial or anything. I really don't because I can't prove this, so I'm really not being conspiratorial here. But would it stand to reason that this whole right-wing Hispanic surge thing that the media has been hyping is so like this is the elite's response to right-wing Hispanics becoming more of a thing? It's like, you beaner coons, I've left the Democrat plantation. Oh, really? Well, we're going to punish you a little bit. And we're going to show you who really runs things here and who ultimately is a real victim here in America. Don't you dare step out of line. And hopefully you're still going to be using Latinx as we told you to, you fucking spics. Now, again, this is a conspiracy theory. I don't actually think that, these were agents of the state sent out to harass these communities, obviously. But notice how no one really cares. The mainstream media isn't making a big deal out of this situation, of these 3 separate incidents. Because if the races were reversed, this would be all over, right? The Atlantic would write a piece about it. The Huffington Post would write a piece about it. The Atlantic would write a piece about it. And they would all be talking about the rise of the Hispanic far right. And that the Latinx community has become toxic and full of Trumpy people. And then they're going to pivot that to being Mayra Flores' fault. If you guys don't know who Mayra Flores is, I will remind you guys, she is the Hispanic, I think she became a congresswoman. And so she's the first Mexican-born congresswoman in the United States. Let me see, Mayra Flores. Let me show you guys if you were not aware of those news. So this is Mayra Flores. She's an American politician who represents Texas' 34th Congressional District. She's the first female Mexican-born member of the House. So yeah, pretty impressive. I don't do identity politics, so it doesn't. I don't really care if she's the first, whatever. But she is pretty right wing. She is pretty conservative, and a lot of progressives hate her. So, and she's been kind of viewed as a right wing AOC. There you go. See, Tori's already saying they are already calling Myra Flores far right. And yeah, so just again, guys, just imagine if the roles were reversed here. We would not hear the end of the rise of the Hispanic far right and saying that we have become neo Nazis. You know what I'm saying? Like this is the level that it's at right now. Yo, so we got Bodega Enterpriser here. Hello. Hello. Is it me or can I not hear you?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yo, what's up?
What's happening?
Yeah, no, I'm here in defense of bodegas.
Absolutely, absolutely. I find it absolutely disrespectful that this is happening to our communities. This is not just the only incident that happened this week. A Mexican lady was assaulted in California as well, and then you saw this fry restaurant in New York as well being assaulted. And it just makes me think that the media elites and the regime media, they don't care about us when the narrative doesn't fit, which is kind of obvious, right? But I'm getting kind of conspiratorial here because this whole Latinos are becoming right wing and Republican thing that the media has been pushing is maybe like a wink and a nod to let us know that, hey, we don't really care about you anymore now that you're no longer reliable Democrat voters. So whatever the FBA community does to you, like we're not going to care about that. That you're on your own.
Precisely, and like place like New York, I mean, even the mayor was vocal to he took like the progressive line by saying that there's further investigation, but he defends business owners. Um, and yeah, that's like how far he'll go, but it's definitely like telling like what's gonna happen like next election, the way like ties are turning.
Yeah, hopefully, the bodega owner can get through this. And the thing is that the system doesn't even let him defend himself because I'm sure you saw this. His GoFundMe fundraiser was just like it was just shot down, and so people have had to kind of cash app him to see if they can gather up enough money for bail. And it's $250,000 worth of bail. That is so crazy. That is insane. Self-defense laws in New York are not good at all.
Well, he was released from last of what I've heard, like but yeah, it was 250. Then like the DA was like reducing it and investigating, but yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. It's terrible, and it's about time. It's about time we start defending ourselves for real. It's about time we started getting serious with this type of stuff because no one's gonna look out for us, especially if we don't toe the party line. Um, we are gonna become the next whites if we keep doing this, and we already know what that means. And unfortunately, a lot of fresh out the boat people don't quite understand that. Which, unfortunately, you know, uh, if you don't know about this type of stuff, then it's gonna end up costing you, right? Let me remind you guys. Wait. Um, the story of the. Let me see. There we go. Let me do another throwback so people can understand the situation, because this happened in Miami too. It happened some time ago.
Una colombiana fue víctima de una violenta golpiza. La mujer viajaba en el metro cuando fue atacada por un hombre afroamericano que ingresó al vagón en el que ella estaba sola. Este hecho indignante quedó grabado en las cámaras de seguridad del sistema de transporte.
Como tantas noches lo había hecho, la colombiana Andrea Puerta, de 29 años, viajaba en el metro de Miami rumbo a su hogar, solo que esta vez el viaje fue aterrador. La sorprendió la furia de un hombre a quien nunca había visto antes. Luego de percatarse de que Andrea estuviera sola, el afroamericano se acercó a ella y la emprendió a golpes. El violento ataque ocurrió el pasado 4 de septiembre, pero solo hasta ahora fue divulgado el video.
Yo perdí el conocimiento, yo me acuerdo hasta la parte que me dijo sorry, yo levanto la mirada y ahí ya viendo el video entendí qué era lo que había pasado, pero yo no me acuerdo cuando me estrujó de un lado al otro ni cuando me tiró contra la silla.
Al recobrar el conocimiento, llamó al número de emergencias y le pidieron buscar a un policía. Cuando llegó a la estación, allí se encontraba también su agresor, identificado como Joshua James King, de 25 años. Ya había sido detenido por agredir a otras 2 mujeres esa misma noche.
Yo fui la primera víctima de él. Es un hombre de casi 2 metros, yo mido 1,57. Él no tuvo compasión de mí. Él me golpeó hasta que pudo.
Aparte de las heridas psicológicas y los hematomas físicos que le provocó, Joshua King le rompió una costilla y le causó una contusión cerebral.
Es un hombre que debe ser conocido y el día que salga toda su vida, pagar por lo que me hizo. Es una persona peligrosa para la sociedad y su hija algún día debe saber la clase de padre que tiene.
King enfrenta cargos por agresión con agravantes y está libre bajo fianza. Andrea recibe apoyo legal.
So yeah, this is the case of a Colombian who just didn't know, right? And you guys know the saying, you know, never relax, fill in the blank. You already know, right? She didn't know because she's so fresh out the boat. You can tell, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, she's not a Colombian American who's been living here for the long. No, she's just a recent immigrant. She was alone in the metro, and you already know I don't know what these guys, you know, what their deals with the metro. It's either the metro, the airport, or, you know what I'm saying, or a restaurant. And she didn't know, and she got her ass whooped, and that's terrible. And it's not her fault, obviously. It's not her fault. But, you know, Hispanics who just come to the U.S., they might not understand, and if you let them know about certain communities, they might start to call you racist. It's like, oh, why are you so racist? You're like those gringos, blah blah blah. So it's like, damned if you do, damned if you don't. Sorry for ranting a bit here. I know you wanted to probably say something. Hello?
My bad, can you hear me? I'm driving, by the way, so I'm like,
oh, okay.
Yeah, but I'm listening.
No, yeah, definitely. I mean, having 3 accidents within the span of a week, it is very concerning. And I don't think this is going to get any better. I don't. I think this whole black and brown unity stuff, I think it's as dead as water. We starting to realize that no, Hispanics we are very much our own thing, not only racially and ethnically, but also in terms of our position in our history in the United States. We're not settlers to the United States. We are immigrants to the United States. We have a different sort of ethnogenesis here in the U.S. And
how do you tell that to like the Ellis Islander as well, or do you even tell that, like, is that a position that you even have? Because like a majority of like the, I suppose, quote unquote white population is actually just like Ellis Islanders from, or you know, or the prominent ones that live outside of cities tend to be like Italian Americans or Polish Americans, et cetera. You know what I mean? So yeah, like do you convey that message to them as well, or is it just like something like Hispanics just have to cope with?
Well, I mean, look, I don't
Because
mind
we
doing.
share like for instance, we would share like with the Mediterranean one specifically, like a Catholic identity, a Roman Catholic identity, and in many cases, like Hispanics are like the continuation of like these Catholic, like they settle in these neighborhoods after like the Ellis Islanders moved to suburbs and cities, So it's like a really interesting relationship they have, I would argue, especially like in the Northeast. That's like unique to like Dominican and Puerto Ricans specifically.
Sure, I don't mind having some sort of alliance or sort of memorandum of understanding with Ellis Islanders. I mean, East Coast Hispanics, we share some similarities with Ellis Islanders. We're not that radically different. Mexicans would be very radically different from Ellis Islanders because, again, as they like to say, we didn't cross the border crossed us. So they have a different thing that are going on. The question is whether they would want to have a pact with us. Because, again, I don't know how cocked some of these communities are because, again, if no one's going to raise the alarm of us being targeted by Black Americans for whatever reason, I don't know what's going on with them. Why do they feel that they're entitled to do this to us? Well, if we don't speak out, then we're just gonna keep getting punked, and hopefully that's not how we usually do things. Like we're usually doing the ones doing the punking, right? But if you raise the alarm, well, now we're officially in the white category, and now we're racist, and then I don't know what happens after that, because if you're actually white, then you just get canceled, and like you basically, like, your life's kind of over. You're gonna have to work for dead end jobs now, or be some like esoteric podcaster, or move to Russia, or I don't know, right? But if you don't fit the racial category of white, I'm not exactly sure what happens when you call out Black crime. I'm assuming that they might try to cancel you, but they might not be able to. So I genuinely don't know what happens after that, because I've never really seen a case of like, hey, there was this Hispanic who called out this issue, and like, he's living, he had to go back to Guatemala because no one would hire him in the U.S. You know what I'm saying? So, Roy Chess, what's up? How you doing?
Hey, how are you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me well?
Yes, sir. Loud and clear.
Oh, cool. I just want to chime in a little bit because I rock with you guys a little bit, right? So I frequent your streams, ranchos, fighters, things like that. I'm not a troll, but I just want to make it clear that I don't think it's Black people targeting Latinos or Hispanics. What do you prefer, Latino or Hispanic? I don't know what you prefer.
I'm fine with either one. I don't have an issue with either one.
Right? I don't
Both
think
are interchangeable at this point, so I'm fine with either.
I mean, some people do make a distinction, so that's why I asked, but I want to make it clear that it's not that. I don't think it's that. So it's a little misleading and scary to someone coming here and being told that. You know what I mean? So it does come off a little racist.
But from my part,
well, I'm going by what you said earlier, just about a minute ago, where especially that clip with the lady on the train. I don't know the whole background of that, but if she was attacked because she was an immigrant or something like that, I don't think it's just they pick Latinos. I think that anyone, if it was an Asian woman, I don't think that Black people are picking races or ethnic groups specifically like that. That the media
right?
might be
It's
making
not
it like that.
targeted. It's just
Right.
more indiscriminate, right?
Well, I think it would have been a Black person too. It could have been anyone. Like it's not based on race or ethnicity. It's just a spare of the moment type of thing, an opportunity that they see.
Okay, but in the third example that I showed, like from the lady who was whose taco stand was attacked, that very clearly had some type of motive, or at least like the black lady felt entitled enough to say kind of like racially and ethically charged things, like when he said, "Oh, you make tacos, burritos," like again, like if you're just pissed off about the food, yeah, it's still wrong for you to spit on the food and that type of thing and throw away the horchata. But she very clearly wanted to kind of twist the knife, so to speak, and kind of like single her out for being Hispanic.
Right. So so there could be cases of mental illness, right? So that's got to be taken into consideration, especially if we're dealing with, people who are in poverty or homeless. A lot of people of color happen to fit in that category. So again, it depends on the circumstances. I don't know if there were personal circumstances, what else was said between them other than the clip said, what the clip showed. So maybe there was some personal thing. Maybe they did it before to her. I don't know. But, to assume that it's just black people, I think that's a far stretch.
Okay, so if I have mental issues, am I just allowed to kind of pick on people for their ethnicity? I mean, I don't know. It seems like you're giving a lot of excuses, and
No,
I understand that.
I'm not making excuses. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to be realistic here. Like a lot of people who have issues are mentally ill. So I don't think
I
it's
mean, in the case of the Bodega, for instance, like it happened in Harlem and like in Central Harlem. I
no,
think it was like
that
a
one is
mental.
not. I don't think that one's mentally ill. I think the lady at the taco thing is mentally illness. The bodega is definitely not mentally ill. I wouldn't consider that mentally ill unless there's some
What,
evidence.
what would you consider that? Like
That was
what,
a dude that was just pissed off. Like maybe there's some mental illness, but I think it's not as clear as the lady was. The lady
yeah, like a
clearly
chimp
seemed,
out. He had like a chimp out at the Bodega, and he got what was coming for.
well, yeah, that's fine if you want to say self-defense, but unfortunately, the laws are the laws, and there are strict laws in New York, where you're not allowed to take someone out because you were defending yourself, especially if deadly force is not being used on you.
Fair enough. You know, I mean, they passed a like now carry in New York, but there's like no definitive clear law on like self defense laws in New York, so it doesn't make any sense. Um, what they just passed recently.
Well, the laws are the same laws that police have. So police are not allowed to
Well, in
use
the
deadly
case of like
force.
the open carry,
Right.
now you can.
So everybody in New York is going to follow the same rules. That's for civilians and police to a certain degree. That unless deadly force is used on you, you cannot use deadly force. That goes for civilians and police officers. So if I go up to a police officer and smack him around, he can't just draw his gun, right? I would have to have a weapon like a knife or a gun or an axe or something like that for him to draw his gun. So if I'm doing stupid things like throwing trash cans at him, he's not allowed to use his weapon. There are other things he can do, but he can't just use deadly force to say he was defending himself. Right? I'm not threatening his life with a weapon, a deadly weapon at least. I mean, it would have to be a severe case, and that's going to be hard to prove. So you're not allowed to go to the extreme. You're supposed to use enough force to stop the threat, and that's it. That's both police officers and civilians in New York.
But that's the thing. Like in some cases, you can't predict the future, so you kind of have to make a decision. Am I gonna die, or is this person gonna die? So, like in the case of the fry restaurant and in the case of the taco stand, these people were very clearly not in danger. their property was in danger, and I'm sure that most laws in the U.S. don't let you just kill someone because they're smashing your shit. You know,
Right.
as you said, there's a reasonable level of restraint that's placed upon you when you get your gun rights, type of thing. But like in the case of the bodega, you don't know that. Like we don't know what that guy could have done to the bodega owner, because he very clearly had the gall to go behind the counter and like enter his little, cashier type of thing, and he pushed him around again. So, and this guy's a little older, so like every punch you throw towards him, it's gonna hit him a little harder. Uh, you know, it could also break a bone. Like he could be disabled for life. Like like we don't know this, bro. So it's difficult to make that split second decision of am I gonna kill him or just neutralize him when someone
Right.
does that type of shit. I mean, come on.
Right. Well, in New York, you do have to be careful. You do have to be mindful of that. So, yeah, you just can't kill them. Like that should be the first thought. I can defend myself reasonably. I could stab them once or twice or whatever, but it can't be like straight in the eye or straight to the jugular. It can't be like a death, like you've been training knife fighting for 20 years and you killed him in like 5 seconds. Like that's going to be obvious. You're going to go to jail. So the initial video does not show the perpetrator with a weapon or using deadly force at all from the clip I saw. And he pulled out a knife out of nowhere and stabbed the guy. So, the other guy didn't have a weapon. The perpetrator did not have a weapon, and then he pulls out a weapon. So that I think that's gonna be a bad sign for him in a court case, because the initial perpetrator did not have a weapon, and he pulls out a weapon out of nowhere. So they can kind of reverse it, right? So now the perpetrator is now the victim because he didn't have a weapon. Now he's defending his life, and he doesn't know if you're going to kill him, right? So he's now defending himself. Do you understand that? Like,
No, definitely. I was more making like a moral argument, but no, you're definitely right in that, and that's why I really strongly disagree with New York's very weak self defense laws. I prefer Florida's stand your ground and the castle doctrine and all that stuff, because you can't just expect again, like this. That should not be, that type of shit shouldn't be tolerated, right? Someone just coming into your behind the counter and just pushing you around because someone can't afford a bag of chips, trying to threaten you with force, and that's kind of like a dissuasive method to try to prevent that in the future.
right. So
Which, sorry.
So I think that if the bodega owners were allowed to get permits, I think a year ago, 2 years ago, something like that, there was a court case, and the court case, I think, eventually led to bodegas being able to have permits in the store, right? I don't know if how long ago. Do you remember the case? There was a young boy, like a 15-year-old, stabbed in a bodega, like I don't know how long ago it was, but I guess it was gang related. It turned out, and they dragged him out of the store, and the bodega guy didn't really do anything. Like it started in the bodega, and then he told him to go outside. He kicked the guy out almost, and then he died. I don't know if you recall that.
No, I don't. I don't remember hearing about this story. No, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it was a Latino. He was a Latino boy, 15 years old, and it turned out eventually that it was a mistaken identity. They thought he was someone else, but at the time, he walks into the bodega store. The guys go in after him. They deal with him. They deal with the bodega owner. The guy thought he was gonna. The bodega owner thought he was gonna rob them, right? They were gonna rob him, and I don't know if they had the knives out or whatever, but they eventually take the little kid outside and they killed him. But at that time, there was a series of bodega robberies also, right? So it wasn't just this one case. And some bodega people were stabbed. I don't know if one lost their life or not. I don't recall that, but I know some of them were stabbed and injured. one of them being an elderly man, right? His son was there, he was there. They got into a scuffle. They did defend themselves, but there were injuries, medical injuries. Now, who's going to pay for these medical injuries and things like that? So it was a legal thing where, you know, I don't know if the immigration status had effect, whether they didn't want people to have guns or whatever, but it was I don't remember what year it was. It had to be maybe 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago or something like that, just before the pandemic, I believe. And there was a court case about bodegas having licenses to own guns so they could defend their stores, like you were saying. And it did go through, right? So had this guy had a weapon, it would probably went a little differently, right? Because he's allowed to carry the gun, and maybe he thought the guy had a weapon. It would have been a lot different had he did that, rather than he seemed passive. He seemed like he was cooperative, and then he pulls out a knife and stabs the guy. So I think that's where he went wrong.
So what you're saying is, legally speaking, it would have been better if he had a gun and kind of been more threatening or more standoffish in the beginning.
Yes. If he would have drew the gun and not fire it right away, he would have got off easy. It would have been that would have dissolved really, really quick. Like, that guy would have learned his lesson and maybe not go back there or whatever. But I don't think it would have escalated past that. So I'm pretty sure that bodega owners can carry legal firearms, just like homeowners can. So I think that was part of the court case, that if homeowners can do it and this is a place of business, why can't you do it? So they allowed it. So there's an organization that I don't remember also that they fought for it. There's a union. I don't know if it's a union called a union or whatever, but there's it's like a union for bodega owners, and there's it's all Hispanic, right? It's all, and they fought for this. Like, you can probably research this, and they won. So a bodega owner is allowed to have a gun to protect his store. So had he done that, it would have went a lot smoother, and a lot of this would have been avoided.
Right. I understand where you're coming from. Definitely. I mean, I do have to agree with you that a knife does seem a bit more gruesome, so that kind of biases the case against the bodega owner. Because as you said, you have to like stab the guy like a couple times, so
Right.
you neutralize the threat. But again, I'm gonna be honest. Again, I still think I'm like Puerto Rican says, I do stand with the bodega owner. More states need stand your ground law, and he also said just a simple push on an older person can kill them. Plus, older people no longer possess the physical abilities to simply just use enough force. And that's the thing that kind of makes me more sympathetic towards the bodega owner, because he's actually an older guy. Like, you can tell he's somewhere in his 50s. And this guy that he stabbed is probably in his 20s, no older than 32 perhaps. So he could do a lot of damage to that bodega owner. So again, I'm going to have to go with the bodega owner for sure, 100%. I do have to. But Royches, one more thing though, because you said that black people aren't targeting Hispanics.
Right.
Now, for the sake of that argument, let me just concede the point to that, because like right now on me, I don't have any evidence towards that. So I can't, again, what can be said without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So, but here's the thing about what Torres said. What about blacks beating the shit out of Asians in New York? Now, I don't know about New York, but I do know that they do target Asians in San Francisco, and I do know that blacks do target Jews with the whole knockout game thing.
Yes.
So
those were gang related incidents. It's not like all blacks are doing it. Those are isolated groups of blacks that happen to do the wrong thing. So again, I don't want people to overgeneralize overgeneralize is the correct word. Like, just because a few bad apples in the barrel doesn't mean the whole barrel is bad. It means you should be careful, but those were gang related incidents, right? So the Asian thing, there was a slash thing in New York for a while. That goes maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe, and I think that's where the Asian thing started, because they started in certain areas which were Asian dominated, and they were slashing Asians in the face. It wasn't like the wrist or the hands or something like that. They were aiming for the face, but it evolved to other people as well, whoever happened to be walking down that street. But I think it did start with the Asians. So you can also Google this. I think it was called the slashing gang, and that was gang initiated. So I don't think it is strictly based on race.
Okay,
Right?
but
So
just because a gang does it, it doesn't mean that there isn't. Because like the slashing game and the knockout game, they weren't doing it to other blacks. Now they may be doing something else to other blacks. I don't know. The light skin the punch a light skinned nigga game. I don't know. Maybe they have that as well. Or like I don't know, bro. Like I'm just talking shit right now. But like
yes, they were not black areas, so that's why they weren't doing it to blacks, right? Those areas were specifically immigrant areas, right? For the lack of a better term, they were not black dominated areas where the neighborhood was black. They were either Asian, white, or something like that. Maybe Latinos and things in there like that. So it wasn't the ghetto. So maybe it was the ghetto kids coming out of the ghetto doing it to non-ghetto people. If that makes sense.
And do you not think that they probably left the ghetto to like, hey, I don't want to do this in my own hood, so let's like fuck with someone else's hood type of thing? Like that also has like a little thing like.
No, I
As
don't
you
think
said,
I don't think it has to do with I don't want to do it to my own people. For example, ghetto. So since you think, just to let you know, maybe I don't know if you know or not, that there's a difference in income as far as black people go, right? So the higher the income, usually the higher the education, usually that they live in the better parts of town. So if you take somebody who's from the projects in New York and they see that black guy who thinks he's better than him because he makes certain money, he has a certain number of degrees, education, he's going to do the same thing to that black guy as he does with everybody else. So even though he's black, he's going to be treated like the white, the Asian, and so on. You know what I'm saying? He's not in the same category as the person who's doing the crime. So that means everybody's on the menu, if that makes sense.
okay, but successful black people, they also get told they're white, like, oh, you act white type of
Yeah,
thing. So
yeah,
again,
that's because of the education. Yes.
yeah, it's not like a skin deep. It's not just skin deep. Like there's also prescriptive elements to it, right?
Yes, yes. So when you're acting white, that's because most of the schools are usually dominated by whites. Like if you look at the people who hold degrees, black people don't have the same percentages as the white people or the Latino people or the other ethnic groups. So unfortunately, there is a correlation between income and income and intellect, right? I don't want to say intelligence. Intelligence is subjective. Intellect is the ability to learn a formal system, right? So in college you
To
learn,
process information, right?
yeah, to process information, and it's a certain format that other people who are educated will recognize. Yeah, this person is educated. I could tell by the way he articulates, the way he thinks, because there's a certain format or certain properties that other people who are educated will recognize, as opposed to somebody who's like, yo man, Ebonics speaking, they're using the wrong verbs in the sentence. They don't know how to punctuate a sentence. Now, if you think their talking is bad, you should see their writing. Like it would be really like, what's this? It would be a 20-year-old man and or 30-year-old man, and he writes like a seventh grader. right? So there is a correlation between bad behavior and the things that we're talking about, like the crimes, right? So it's not that the higher educated blacks are committing those crimes. It is the lower income, lower educated individuals that are committing those crimes. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that, but in addition to that, there's also, and I know this is a very touchy subject, so I'm gonna just literally mention it and not talk too much about it. There's also the IQ thing, right? That there is a sweet spot for criminality at about 85 IQ, right? Because if your IQ is too low, like you can't even plan out a crime, like you're not really able to fathom the ability of doing crime. And if you're very high intellect, um actually that's also interesting, because then we get into the issue of white collar crime, or just the fact that you're too fucking weird and you just kind of like, you don't really care about civilization. And 100 IQ, that's kind of where most people at. But at a certain IQ level, you also start to see that criminal, and it happens with Hispanics too. Like, let's not kid ourselves. Hispanics do also commit a lot of crime, and it's actually underreported because in some states, Hispanics are categorized as white. So when Hispanic commits a crime, that's bumping up the white crime rate, not so much the Hispanic crime rate. But yeah, I would argue that intellect and socioeconomics are leading causes in terms of criminality.
And since you brought up intellect, also remember that scale has been adjusted for developmental disabilities, right? So they don't say mental retardation anymore. It's more of intellectual disability, I think, is the new term, is the professional term for that definition, the MR word. So that is defined by a certain IQ, believe it or not. I believe it's under 70. So if
Yes.
you're 80 or above, I think you're average. But if you're below 70, you border like the autism spectrum. You maybe there's Down syndrome, maybe there's Asperger's. There's usually something there that is why that person is 70 or below. And those people, if they act up, we can't just those people have to be treated differently regardless of race, right? So take race out of it, right? So like if you find out that lady, the one that was spitting in the food, if she was like a 65 IQ, you have to kind of give them a pass a little bit because of her mental illness. All right. So what she did is absolutely wrong. Um, you know, reprehensible, things like that. But you can't go hard as if I did it. You know what I mean? I'm a normal person. If I were to do it, I deserve to be the fullest extent of the law. But when she does it, if she's mentally ill, she's gonna get a break for sure. Right? Would you agree with that? Like if I did it or a mentally ill person did it, the result is different.
The way you're wording it, no, I would not agree with you. Because I don't know what you mean by giving them a pass. Because if you have people who are mentally disabled, then they need to be removed from society. Now, I don't mean like killing them. Like, no, I don't. YouTube, don't be on my ass. But we used to have like mental health wards, right? And I know some of them were kind of fucked up. So we could modernize those mental health wards, give them full facilities, 3 meals a day, medicine, that type of thing, right? We're not.
It's funny you say that because in New York they outlawed those. There are no more mental institutions. I researched a little bit, and it goes back into the 1970s, right? So they outlawed it way back then, in the 1970s, because people were being abused. For parents or family members visiting their relative in those institutions were appalled at what they saw. They were being physically abused. They were being over medicated. Their living conditions were horrible. They weren't being showered or cleaned up. Like it was a zoo basically. So there were so many violations that every institution had them, right? All of them. So that they basically banned all of them, outlawed all of them. So now the state is not typically involved. They have no obligation at this point. As I speak right now, there is no obligation for the state to step in and to take these mentally ill people off the streets. They'll try, but there is no place for them. Like the institutions were the place where they would throw them in. Like, oh, you're mentally ill, throw them in there. Just like the homeless people have a shelter, they get thrown in. There's no institution for that for mentally ill people anymore. They go to a psychiatric hospital until they get treated. And what do you think they're going to do? They're going to release them again. So the cycle is going to repeat again. Now that's messed up. But what else? What else are you going to do? I don't know if California is like that. I don't know if they have institutions per se.
Very interesting point that you brought up, and that has been going on. I think at a federal level, the United States does not really do much in terms of mental health and with the intellectually disabled. That is true. Now, Danny here says there's a hospital in Queens just for these people. Stop the cap. A Creedmoor Psych Center in Queens. Stop it.
No, that's closed. They closed those. All of those institutions have been closed since the 1970s. Now they may still be open, but they're not doing what they used to do, right? They're not taking, like if I was mentally disabled and walking around the streets, right? I seen literally people walk in front of traffic. Like this guy was looking to get hit by buses, cars. Like he would only cross the street when a car or a bus was coming. He was clearly mentally ill. So eventually police are going to be called because this guy is doing stupid stuff. People are calling, for this guy. And he's been doing it for a long time. He's living on the street. He's homeless. And he's mentally ill. So Creedmoor is not just going to come and pick him up. No. He's going to go to a mental hospital, a psychiatric ward in a hospital, and he's going to be treated, and then he's going to be released. There are no such things as intellectually disabled institutions anymore, or MR institutions anymore. They do not force people in them. It is volunteer only. So the organization that's in charge, I think statewide, as far as New York goes, is the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. They are acting on behalf of the state. Now they don't have institutions anymore. So what they do is contract private organizations who have services similar to Creedmoor, similar to what you would call a group home, right? But they kind of moved away from the institution setting. So Danny, when I say closed, I mean that they're not admitting people. They're not just taking people off the street. That is illegal. So if you have a mentally ill person on the street, the police are going to be called. Let's say somebody calls the police. They're going to be sent to an institution, a psychiatric hospital. That's the closest thing to an institution that we have in New York. There is no such thing as where we're sending him to Creedmoor and they must take him. You can't force a mentally ill person into a group home. It has to be a circumstance that allows that. Usually family members.
Yeah, Roches, I kind of understood what you were saying, but you did word it kind of like very ambiguously, because you did say Creedmoor was closed. So I kind of understood what you were trying to say, like closed as in they don't just institutionalize people nowadays. Like there's no in Spanish we call them manicomios or psych wards, right? Like the psych ward, you take the crazy people off the street and you just leave them at the ward, and they're not in jail because they haven't committed a crime, but I mean it's kind of like a jail. They're not going to let you out. You know what I'm saying? Like you become institutionalized for the rest of your life, and you're kept away from society. Let's say, wait, they're brought to a hospital. If they are deemed a threat to themselves or the public, then they are transferred. It's not a group home. You're 90%.
So where do they send them? So where do they send them, Danny? Because you know, the psych ward is not going to keep them forever. You know how expensive it is. They're not going to keep them. And I know some things about this because I have intellectually disabled persons in my family. So I know that it's hard to get into a group home in some cases because there's no spaces. They're full. You know, there's no vacancies. There's no beds or rooms are available. So in New York, there's a lot of people that meet this criteria and they don't have a place to go. That they have to stay at a family member's home, even though they need to be institutionalized. If we go back by the old ways, that the family members are struggling to keep them under control because they have behavioral issues, toileting issues, medications that they have to constantly give them, like they're working at a hospital. That's what the wards. That's what the institutions used to do. They would give them medication 3 times a day or whatever. So once a doctor evaluates. Okay, but where do they go? Right. So you go to a psych ward in a hospital, correct? I know that for a fact. But they're not there forever. So after 72 hours, where do they go? They're going to get released. And where do they go? Most likely the streets. if their family members don't want them, like the guy I was talking about, like he was a black guy, older gentleman, have to be, I would say, over 50, easy. Like his facial features were definitely over 50, and he looked like he was homeless, and he had nobody caring for him, and he would almost, you would think he's trying to commit suicide, walking in front of traffic. And why was he not picked up very quickly? He's been doing it for a while. He eventually was, I don't know if he died or whatever. I don't see him anymore, but I don't know what happened to him. It's not that easy.
And then, okay, Danny, so where are they sent to? It could be any state, but I guess we're talking about New York. So, because I do know what Roy Chess is saying, and I have read some shit about it. I think Stefan Molyneux did a video about the death of the archetypical psych ward and how, like, these long-term, what they would previously call lunatic asylums, like they were usually, like, people advocated against those because they were abusive. And again, there were a lot of issues with them. I'm not going to say that they weren't, but instead of reforming those institutions, they just did away with them completely.
Correct.
And now we just have a bunch of crazy homeless people. And maybe
Yes.
sometimes they're not homeless, but like we have a bunch of crazy people in the streets and they're doing all this damage. And the thing is that, as you said, Roches, they're so mentally, intellectually disabled that they can't be tried, right? Because in order to stand for trial, you have to be fit for trial. Intellectually, you have to know what you're doing, or you have to know what you did to kind of plead guilty, plead innocent, state your case. But these people are so, for lack of a better word, retarded that they don't know what they did.
Right. They're literally retarded, but we don't use that word anymore.
Yeah. So like we can't jail someone that doesn't even know what they're doing.
Right.
That's like jailing a kid for murder. Like, even if a kid kills someone, like, kids are not mentally, intellectually developed enough to understand what they just did. Now, again, we can take them to a youth facility or whatever, but like that's the whole point of the justice system, is that we only send people to jail who, one, we know they did the crime, and two, they were in the intellectual capability to commit said crime. Because otherwise, if we had a rational system, we would send them to a psych ward, keep them away forever, so that they don't harm themselves or society. And again, hopefully, if we ever bring back these psych wards, they will be better, and there will be less physical, verbal, sexual abuse, and just because again, it's literally not their fault. It's like
Right.
kind of dealing with a dog that bit you. Is it really the dog's fault? The dog doesn't know right or wrong sometimes. It's that type of thing.
Right. There are no state facilities, Danny. There are no such things as state facilities anymore. They are all privately owned. They all have a an umbrella they fall under, right? So they all fall under the Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. That is the representative for the state, right? So the state doesn't even have property where they send people anymore. That would be considered an institution. They outlawed that, like I said. So there are no state. There is no mandatory, you must go here. There is no such thing. That if I have developmentally disabled persons in my family, and I know one they're looking for a home, right? And they can't find one. So if it were mandatory, he would have a home, right? So they're subcontracting to private agencies. So these group homes are all private agencies. They're not run by the state. They're regulated by the state. They may get some funding because they're taking some of those patients on behalf of the state. So they may get funding, which is why those private companies exist. So the state does not house people anymore who are intellectually disabled. There is no mandatory placement. Like if I commit a crime, there's a jail for me. The state runs that. But there is no mandatory placement for intellectual disabilities. Not that unless you can prove it.
Right. Now this was a bit of okay. It says Kingsborough, Creedmoor, Manhattan Psych. All right, let me see.
They can't force you to take them, right? You can't you're gonna take this person. You can't do that. The police can't do that. There's criteria that for them to take them, right? That if it's not a fit, if they don't have the staff or the resources to take that person, they're not going to take them. You can be rejected. So again, it's not mandatory. Prison is mandatory, right? If I commit a crime, there's a prison for me, right? So if I have a certain disability, this place might not be a fit for me because they don't have the resources that I need, right? They don't have enough staff or whatever the case is. So it's more of a customized thing. It's not a state issue thing.
So Danny says, bro, I'm literally proving you wrong with 90% of the statements. I just told you the criteria. Nobody said anything about mandatory. Yo, Danny, if you want to argue with Roy Chess, I think it would be a good conversation. Let's if you can make it, I did send the StreamYard link. I'm looking for the video in which I actually heard about this very specific subject of the undoing of the American Psych Ward and how the U.S. government is just not really taking care of the intellectually disabled. So if you could just give me 5 minutes, Roy Chess, you can, I'm gonna give you the mic. You can state your piece, and I'm gonna just be back in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Yeah, yes, no problem. So just so we're clear, for everybody listening, mandatory meaning if I have someone who's mentally ill, intellectually disabled, and it's a severe case, I cannot call anyone, such as the police or the government, to come take him. There's no mandatory placement. I'm stuck with him until I find a placement, until a vacancy arises. with the institutions, that was not the case. That's the difference between what the institutions were and what we have now. If I had an intellectually disabled person in my household and I can't handle them anymore, I could send them to the institution. The institution would take them because that's what they're there for. That's what they were funded for. They were staffed for that. But now that they took away that, I don't have a place where I can call and say, "Come get this person." I can't take care of them. There's no such thing. So what happens? How this turned into the conversation was that a lot of these people who are committing crimes, who happen to be black, and they may be attacking Latino stores or whatever, they are mentally ill, and it's not because they're just criminals. They're mentally ill and they're on the streets with nowhere to go, nobody to look after them. So they do irrational things. They do appalling things. So that's how we got to this point why we started talking about this, because I don't want people to think it's just race. Like it's intentionally race that black people have it for these people or those people, that all blacks are criminals or all blacks are uneducated. So I wanted to make that distinction.
All right, so I'm back. Although, Righteous, wouldn't you be able to say that? Because okay, so it's not race, but then could we then say that there is a higher prevalence of these intellectual disabilities among the black community? Because again, and let's be honest here. Black Americans do commit a disproportionate amount of crimes in the U.S.
Right.
And they also commit a disproportionate amount of interracial crime in the U.S.
Right.
So,
I don't want to make it sound like I'm blaming everything on mental illness. I don't want to go to that extreme either. So I hope you don't take it that I'm trying to make excuses for that. I'm saying a small percentage of cases are probably going to be mentally ill. The other cases are probably planned out. I'm not going to say that they're mentally ill. So income level has something to do with it. Income and education are closely correlated. So the lack of income means the lack of proper education, which means that they have to kind of make things happen because they don't know of any other way. Right? So if they're not taught to do certain things, not to mention the peer pressure that also follows, with it. So peer pressure and the lack of education is why a lot of crimes happen in the black community, where it seems to other people it may be them versus the blacks versus everybody else, but they're looking at as survival. So they would rob me, they would rob you. I don't think it's racial when it comes to who they victimize. Of course, they want to victimize the person with the most. So if I have $1 million and you have, $1,000, of course they're going to rob me. They'll leave you alone if they know they can get to me. So I don't want you to think that it's race. That in some cases, a lot of the black people who would be victims are broke just like them. So they're not going to go to the black person. So why would a black thug who lives in the ghetto rob another black person who's living in the ghetto? That almost makes no sense because I'm living in the ghetto with you, so I'm broke. That makes no sense. So why not rob the people with the resources that you want? I know that sounds kind of messed up, right? So you tell me.
all right, so guys, I found the video. It's by Stefan Molyneux, and you can find it on Odyssey, and it's called "The Destruction of America's Mental Health." And I'm obviously I'm not going to play the video. You guys can look at that on your own time. But I'm going to this important slide that he's talking about. He was talking on here. It says states hospitals unintentionally undermined. So it says here, in many cases, opposition to state hospitals was ideologically motivated. Rather than attempting to implement admittedly necessary reforms, many key players sought to end the system outright. In his 1962 testimony before the Senate Appropriations Committee, NIMH Director Robert Felix said, quote, if the communities will enter into cooperation with the federal government and the private foundations and agencies with right goodwill, public mental health hospitals as we know them today can disappear in 25 years. Enemies of, end quote. Enemies of state hospitals went so far as to claim that institutionalization was actually the cause of mental illness, and claimed that the mentally ill could get better if only society would set them free and let them live as they choose. Now, again, this is a 3 hour and 15-minute presentation, so it's really long, and it's been years since they last saw this video. But I would definitely recommend it because, again, I understand what Roy Chess is saying, and this presentation does seem to confirm some of the stuff that he's been talking about tonight. And that's definitely something that we don't talk about. It's the fact that psych wards kind of became very unfashionable to defend, and people just wanted to abolish the system outright instead of reforming it. And now we have all these mentally ill people running around and committing crimes. Now that we got that out of the way, because this is actually a segue, like we detoured quite a bit into what we were saying. Okay, but Rich, I mean, you do know about the thing about Asians and they were targeted, right? These Asians were being targeted in San Francisco, and it was, I think, exclusively it was black people targeting them. They were targeting old Asian ladies. And I don't think that they were just robbing them. I think I was just like punching them and shit like that.
Yeah, it wasn't robbing. It was more of a challenge, similar to the slashing game, the knockout game. It was similar to that. So it was certain cliques doing that. It wasn't like just random black people doing it. So we have to take into mind that there are certain cliques doing that. It's not every black person.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I know it's every black person, but that's kind of like saying, like, if a biker gang beats a black person, like, we're not gonna say like, oh, it was just a biker gang, like, you know, that doesn't represent all white people, which it doesn't. It does, obviously it doesn't represent all white people, but like, why did the biker gang not target a white guy? That's what I'm trying to say. And again, that doesn't make the crime better. Like, you're still assaulting someone, of course, but that's the thing. Is that in San Francisco they were targeting old Asian ladies, and they were not even robbing them. They were just straight up physically assaulting them. So I don't know if it's because it's funny to them or whatever.
Right. It was entertainment.
You can't tell me it was just a coincidence that they just so happened to keep beating on old Asian ladies.
No, maybe it was targeted. It was targeted for a reason. I can't tell you the literal reason because I don't know, but it's definitely more of an entertainment thing, that they thought it was entertaining or funny or whatever. Whatever it is, it was sick, but they weren't I think they would pick and choose who they would there's certain people they're not going to mess with, and then certain people they would. I don't think it was just random, because that would be careless.
Let's give me a minute. All right, so yeah, exactly. So, and that's the thing. Like, I don't particularly care if they had an explicitly racial motive to it, because intent, like, talk of intent, kind of goes cheap when the result is very obvious. You can tell that there was something. Again, it could just be because they found it funny. It could be racially motivated. It could just be that they asserted that old Asian ladies were like the easiest target, and they just wanted to beat up on someone. Because again, I haven't read those articles in a while, so like, as you said, you can't literally say that it was like an anti-Asian thing going on. But there was certainly an element of the fact that they were Asian that maybe there would be an easy target to kind of pick on.
Yes.
And that's something that we need to talk about, because if we don't, and that's the thing, it's like, because look, I personally don't have an issue with Black Americans from my personal experience. They've been very nice to me. I've never had any issues with them. I guess in the parts of Florida where I've lived, it's just never been a thing. Like, oh, you Hispanic, like, you don't trust you. No, like, it's always been chill. So I don't. It's not like a personal like vendetta that I have. but it is something that you observe in the United States, and
Right,
it's
but
something.
you also learn about it before you get here, don't you?
No, not really. I mean, before I went to the U.S., like I guess you could say I had like a stereotypical view of Black Americans, like, but I had several. I had like the stereotype of the black nerd. I had the stereotype of the oh, I'm a real nigga. I'm in the streets. I'm in the hood type shit, blah blah. But I never saw these stereotypes as threatening. Like I just thought, like, oh, that's just because we have similar stereotypes in Colombia, and they're not necessarily about Black people. We have the stereotype of the ñero, which is a mestizo sort of like gangster type. Let me see if I can pull it up here on Google, show you what a ñero looks like. Perfect. This is literally perfect. There you go. So I guess you could say that there are version of cholos, but like even more scummy. So like, as you can see here, most are typically mestizos.
Okay.
This is a very typical ñero from like he's at a soccer match. You know, they tend to be strong soccer supporters. So I thought, oh, that's like the Black American gangster stereotype. Like that's kind of similar to the ñero stereotype. Like live in low income neighborhoods, and they just kind of they have like an urban thing going on, and they're into crime, and but as long as you don't fuck with them, they don't fuck with you, and effectively that's been the case with me. Like again, I've bought weed in hood, and apart from getting scammed one time by a bunch of teenagers, it was always a nice experience. Like no one really fucked with me type shit, because they knew I was just there to buy weed, and they didn't want to fuck up the spot. And it's like, oh, this dude trying to buy some weed, so we're not gonna fuck with him. Buy his weed, and he'll be on his way real soon. But the thing is that this is affecting other Hispanics, and if I'm going to declare myself as someone who cares about my community, then I have to like talk about the issues that are affecting my community, and this appears to be one of them.
Right. So money is the root of evil. Well, it's not the right quote. I know it's not the exact quote, because the love of money is the root of all evil. But money motivates people, and in a lot of those bad cases, money is a factor, I think. So if the Latino carts are being robbed and things like that, it's simply because they're easier targets than other targets. So I don't think it has to do with them being Latino or immigrants or anything like that. If it were white people, it would be white people. If it were Black people, it would be Black people being victimized. So where the money is where that crime would happen. So again, I want to steer it away from per se race, because then you're scaring people who are coming over here and giving them false ideas. You know what I mean? Not to say that they will have it. I mean, they're free to choose or reject what you tell them. But we don't, as a Black American, right? I don't want people having the pre-assumed notion that I'm stupid or I'm violent or other things, right? So there is a difference between low income and high income. I come from what you would call a ghetto, right? So I wasn't born rich. I'm doing better now, but I'm still around the ghetto. So I know very much about being poor and Black in America, even though I'm light skinned, right? I don't know if you've seen my, I think you were on the stream when I showed my photo with Rancho, right? I believe you were there a while ago.
I don't recall what you look like, but I kind of figured out that you were light skinned. I just kind of figured.
So
you got a Prince photo, so that kind of told me something.
just to dox myself a little bit more. I don't want to dox myself too much, but one of my parents is white, right? So I have a white mother. My father is Black, right? So I am a fair-skinned person. If you were to see me, you would probably think I'm Latino, right? So, but again, when I say race, I say something different from what most people think. Most of the Latinos and other ethnic groups don't see race as the American definition. The American definition is a specific definition, and I know that I'm going to get a little pushback here, but the American definition was created by whites, and for the most part, it's race there are 4 races, and it was created by a white guy. It wasn't the German scientist that people think, who was measuring skulls. It wasn't that guy. It was in 1735. There's a guy named Carl Linnaeus. You can Google it. He's the father of modern taxonomy. So he was a biologist, right? So biologists classify different forms of life, and this guy was the first guy to classify humans in a form similar to the other animals, right? So they have different birds, different cats, different dogs, different fish in the water. He is the first that I know of that classify human in some kind of way, right, outside of anyone else's work. Darwin didn't even talk about humans, I don't think. I think he just talked about animals in general. But you can look this up, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. You can correct me. But as far as I know, Carl Linnaeus, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, but you can Google it. He did this way before that. There's a, I can't remember, Johannes something. There's a weird name. I don't know if he's German or. I was just thinking about this, where this guy measured skulls, and he was an anthropologic biologist or something like that. People tend to use his definition of race, which was not based on biology, but based on physical features, which we call phenotype now. But phenotype wasn't invented at that time. Phenotype was first used in 1909. It wasn't a word until then. Right? So race to Americans, far as the white elitist, it refers to genetics. Some of it, which they were probably wrong about, was intelligence. So, even Hitler had this idea that whites were intellectually superior, right? That Germans, it turns out to be, he picked Germans, or the Aryan whites to be superior to other whites, right? So there was qualities such as intellect, and there are some other features such as the way the shape of your face and the skull is, the blue eyes, the blonde hair. I don't want to get into too much specifics, but some things were genetic, and this is why the races were formed. And one of the reasons why slavery happened was because of the so-called intellectual defect that people of color had. So it wasn't that you're black, that's why you're stupid. It's more like you're stupid, and that's why you're black. So people have it kind of backwards, if you understand what I'm saying, right? So a lot of immigrants take it to be skin color. It's not about skin color. It's about, you were born this way, right? Your skin, you're born with that skin, but your mind is deformed because you were born like this, right? Your skin color has nothing to do with it. Right? So even other whites would be treated differently if they're on the lower IQ side, if you understand what I'm saying. Certain features like Down syndrome, whether you're white, black, or whatever, you're going to be thrown away. Even the Spartans and the Greeks, they threw away some of their own people. Right? So it's not just skin color. It's genetic features, which a lot of people will reject today because they don't think that it's correct. But this is the origin of what race started from, that you were born a certain way. Your genes allowed these things to happen. Like, everybody doesn't have freckles. Something has to happen in your genes to get freckles. Something has to happen in your genes to get sickle cell anemia or other disformities, right? One arm shorter than the other. I don't know what there's a. It's not. I'm not talking about 1 or 2 inches. I'm talking about like one arm is like 3 feet, and the other one is like significantly longer, and it's crooked. It's like the elbow is up. I don't know how to express that. So a physical handicap is a genetic thing. So you were less of a person, right? So it was a biological thing. It wasn't skin color. So I would still be considered black, not because of my skin color, because of my genetics.
Right, the one drop rule thing, and well, I mean, us like the Hispanista guys, like we do like agree with you guys that in a way racism was created by white supremacists in America. Like we're not really debating that. And as a matter of fact, as you said, who was white was something that wasn't expressly clear at the time, because nowadays we would think, oh, white means having white skin and coming from Europe. Well, not necessarily, because even Benjamin Franklin did not see Germans as white, not white as he was thinking of whiteness. So it says here, he started the quote here. It says, quote, which leads me to add one remark, that the number of purely white people in the world is proportionably very small. All Africa is black or tawny. Asia, chiefly tawny. America, exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians, and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion, as are the Germans also, the Saxons only excepted, who, with the English, make the principal body of white people on the face of the earth. I could wish their numbers were increased. And while we are, as I may call it, scouring our planet by clearing America of woods, and so making the side of our globe reflect a brighter light to the eyes of inhabitants in Mars or Venus, why should we, in the sight of superior beings, darken its people? So as you can see, and then he finishes the quote here. It says, but perhaps I am partial to the complexion of my country, for such kind of partiality is natural to mankind. So yeah, even I mean, it's kind of crazy to think that Germans were at some time, so at some point in time, we're not considered white by white America. In order to be white, you have to be of Anglo-Saxon stock. So for sure, we would definitely agree with you guys on that white supremacy and whiteness is an American thing.
Yeah, and it's biological, right? So it's genetic. So if you're not an Anglo-Saxon, you're not white, according to what you just read. So it's not just skin color. Eventually, it turns out to be skin. It kind of turned into that, which is why a lot of people think phenotype is a thing. But it wasn't always that way originally, and that's important to know.
Exactly. Very early on, there was not the assimilationist policy that the Spanish had, because obviously Spaniards themselves are not fully quote unquote Spanish, because I mean the Spanish race is not really a thing. There's a mixture of ancient pre-European peoples like the Basques. You have more North African heritage in the south of Spain. You have some Roman heritage from the Roman Empire, and Spaniards are actually a bit of a racially mixed people, but the Spanish ethnicity is what kind of united them, or more specifically, like the ethnicities of each individual kingdom. Like you had the Catalans, you had the Castilians, you had the Portuguese, and that type of thing. Before it was actually United Spain. So that's the difference between the Anglo-Saxon Protestant mindset and the Spanish Catholic mindset, is that they were very exclusionist, right? They only saw Anglo-Saxons as the best people of humanity, right? And you couldn't really buy your way or kind of Anglo your way into being an Anglo. You were either born with it or you were not born into it.
Correct. So it's about what's inside, not just skin color, right? So it's super important that people understand this. It's not just skin color, because people pass it off like it's just skin color today. Like if you ask average Latino or ask average, Haitian or whatever, Dominican, they're all going to say skin color. And that's not correct as far as America goes. It's what's inside, not what's outside. So I don't know where that goes wrong. Why people think it's skin color only. That I'm still trying to figure out.
Right. But Rich, now that you were mentioning the stuff about like you don't want foreigners to come to the U.S. and like immediately be racist towards black people because of shit that we might be saying, for example. okay, like I get where you're coming from, and in a way, I kind of agree with you. But then you kind of pivoted to socioeconomics. So okay, at the very least, we should be able to say, okay, like be careful with ghetto people, who yes tend to be disproportionately black, because these people can be violent. Um, these people can like assault you, rob you, that type of thing. You know, and again, you could probably even say this about the barrios, because again, I have to point this out. Hispanics also commit a disproportionate level of crime, and it's something that I guess this community doesn't really like to talk about, because I guess that kind of validates white supremacist talking points. And I understand all of that, right?
Right. Right. I think
And,
that would
and
be better. That would be better to explain it that way than just to put a general cap on it like all blacks.
yeah, I mean, of course,
low income would be better.
yeah, sure. I'm not saying all black people at all. I mean, again, I have had very good positive interactions with Black Americans. They've not done any harm to me. So I wouldn't have a reason to tell people that.
The higher earning income black people don't have this thug mentality or the thinking that someone from the ghetto would have. They're completely different. Completely different. Like if you talk to me and you talk to one of them, like I'm from the streets, right? So somebody who's growing up in Beverly Hills or somewhere, they're gonna be completely different from me, right? So even though he's blacker than me, he has darker skin than me. Would he know what a struggle is? Probably not. Would he know would he have street smarts? Probably not. I would be able to run circles around him. Far as intellect, yeah, he might have a better intellectual background than I do. His family has money. He's going to the better colleges. I go to like a regular college. Nobody cares about this college. He's probably going to the better colleges like UCLA or the Ivy League colleges, right? That have a name that go along with it. Where my education is just, I went to this college over Queens College. It's not the same thing as Yale. It's not the same thing at all. And he will even look down upon me because he's higher educated, right? Even though he's black. And it turns out that a lot of those people don't even recognize where they come from or relatives that are in the same income bracket as me. Like, I don't know if you ever heard of the forget where you come from or the goody two shoes type of phrases in the slang. I'm not sure. You tell me if you're aware of those or not.
I know about goody two shoes, and which one did you say? The other one?
Forget where you come from.
Yeah, you forget your roots.
Yeah.
Yeah, that type of thing. Yeah, I kind of know what you're talking about.
Right. So those are the people who tend to do that. The guys who lived in the hood and then they make it, and then he'll deny that he ever went to school with me. Or that then you have the extreme where they never was in the ghetto ever, and so they don't know anything about the ghetto, and they don't associate with anybody from the ghetto. So you're beneath me. I can't talk to you, type of thing. So it doesn't matter the race either, right? Whether you're black, white. If he has a PhD from Harvard and you're just like some, regular guy, he's going to talk to you a certain way and let you know that you're not his equal. he's on another level and you're on the level below him. I don't know if you have that either in Spain. I think you would probably have that also, right?
Sorry, Roches, I lost you there. Could you repeat again what you were saying? Like, I think I lost you at someone who leaves the hood and like, oh, I don't even remember going to school with this person, and then I kind of lost you there. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm broken. Okay, sorry. So there are. I spoke about two different cases where one was in the hood and he found a way out somehow, and the people he went to school with, he no longer recognizes them or associates with them. He cuts them off completely. Then you have the opposite extremist who never ever understood what the ghetto was, never stepped foot in the ghetto, doesn't know what a struggle is. They've always lived the plush life, and they always had the best of everything. So they would be, I guess you would call elitist to everybody pretty much outside of their group, regardless of color, regardless of race, right? So whether you're black, white, Chinese, doesn't matter. If he has a PhD and you're just a regular guy, he's going to speak to you a certain way, and he will let you know that you're not his equal, that he's above you. So again, it's not a race thing. It's a mentality thing. In a lot of the instances. So it's not about race or skin color. I want to make that clear.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, we do have an equivalent to that. We call them creídos, or which, I mean, that one word literally means people who think too highly of themselves. And so, people who leave the barrio and like, it's like, yeah, they don't want to associate with the plebs anymore, and yeah, that type of thing. And in Colombia, we have a quite rigid socioeconomic system to the point where it's divided by strata. So the poorest people are stratum number 1 or estrato uno, and then it keeps going like strata 5 and 6. So estrato 5, estrato 6, those are like the highest income earners and that type of thing. So
Okay.
when someone tells you you're acting like a stratum 6 person, it's that they're trying to call you like, yeah, like, oh, you think you're so much better than everyone just because you got money and that type of thing.
Sometimes
Yeah,
you use the word stuck up.
Stock up. There we
Yeah.
go. There we go. Yeah. So yeah, gomelos. That's what we usually call them. Yeah.
Yeah, they have no street smarts. No, not I mean none. Like a child is smarter than them on the street. They may be highly educated. A lot of those guys are highly educated, right? They may have master's degrees or PhDs, which probably gives them some, I don't know, mentally gives them some kind of stimulus where they're above everyone else. But they don't do the crimes, right? You're unlikely going to find criminals doing the physical crimes. Maybe they do some crazy other crimes like sexual assault or something like that. Those are the guys who kidnap people and do those other crimes, sexual stuff, kidnapping, incest, and all those are the guys who do those things. The poor guys don't do those things, right? At least in America, we don't kidnap poor people just so we can get a ransom or anything like that. That doesn't happen, right? That's usually white guys doing that, or the upper ups doing that, right? It's very rare that a poor person has the time for that. They're just trying to get money or trying to get resources. So they don't do that. They don't tend to do the sexual crimes either for the majority of the cases. They do sexual crimes like rape and stuff like that. But when you look at who does it the most, it's usually above middle class that are doing that. The poor people are not just interested in sex like that. They're not sex crazy like that. They're trying to get somewhere. They're not just trying to get free feels. That's usually the people outside of the ghetto doing those other heinous crimes, cutting people up and things like that. So it's a mental issue again on that side. So they're academically smart, but they have some personality disorders, a lot of them. So they commit those crimes, sexual assault, kidnapping, cutting people into limbs, severing the body parts, throwing them in the river and stuff like that. That poor people don't do stuff like that for the most part.
No, right. Yeah, I get what you're trying to say. Yeah, definitely. All right. So I think I'm gonna cap it off here, guys. I just wanted really to make a quick live stream on that issue. I might stream tomorrow because there's a whole bunch of shit that's been happening worldwide. You saw the assassination of Shinzo Abe, former prime minister of Japan. We saw some massive protests in the Netherlands over some World Economic Forum malarkey that's happening over there in that country. We're seeing some protests in Ecuador. There's a lot of stuff going around the world, so you guys definitely tune in for that. Same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. We're just going to talk about all those topics. Thank you, Roy Chess, for coming in.
Thank you for having me.
We had a good discussion. And again, I think I'm gonna still stand by my statements. Definitely free Bodega Dominican. I think he's a great guy, and we should definitely have a conversation about black criminality. Sticking with the facts. We're not going to use, no offensive language, no stereotyping, no nothing. Let's just, keep it civil, keep it educated, and then we can have a discussion that benefits both sides. Because again, Hispanics also have a crime problem, and we also have to talk about that as well. It's just that the topic of the conversation was a different one,
right?
According to the trends that happened this week. So thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow, and you guys have a very good Friday night. Y'all have a good one. Peace.
Right. Take care.